I want to call to order the meeting of the Rutherford County Regional Planning Commission for July 14th, 2025. We'll ask that everyone please stand at this time, and we'll have our prayer and pledge of allegiance. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we're thankful for the day that you've given us and for all the many blessings we have here in Rutherford County. We're truly a blessed county for what we have, and Father, we're so thankful for those. Father, we ask that you be with us this evening as we work over the issues, things that are important to the county. Help us to make the correct decisions. Father, we pray for those within the Texas area that have lost lives, lost property. We ask that you continue to be with them and put your arms around them. Father, we offer this prayer in your Son's holy name. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the Thank you. You may be seated. Madam Secretary, you may call the roll.
Jim Averwater, Jeff Phillips, Mike Cush,
Present.
Lee Bogle, Charlotte P., Trey Gooch, Jim Thompson, Michael Shirley,
Here.
Jason Beavers, Amber Brown, Pettis Reed.
Here. We do have a quorum. I'll ask at this time that we have the reading of our minutes from May 12th and 27th. I'll call on our Vice Chairman, Lee Bogle.
Sure, this is live. Yes. All right. I have reviewed the minutes for both meetings, and they are in good order, and I make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Have a second. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, minutes have been approved. Public comments?
No, sir. No public comments tonight.
No public comments. Any items withdrawn or deferred?
No, sir, and it's probably a good thing since there's only one item on the agenda.
Okay. I think you wanted to say something, I believe? Or?
Well, I wasn't sure if we were going to have someone from IT come down to kind of discuss. I think he was down here a little early, just kind of going over the new microphones. All of you have noticed that this room has been had some serious renovations for sound. You have some new sound equipment there on your tables. Essentially, what you just need to make sure is when you first pick the microphone up out of the base, it'll take a few seconds for it to connect. You'll see it on the front, it'll be blinking, and then you'll see it'll say connected. Now, if that little light on there, once it's green, that means it's live. So if you want to talk into it after that, you'll be able to be heard, but make sure you are talking into it. You know, you still need to make sure you're talking directly into the microphone. If you press that little button on the front, it'll mute it. It'll be a little, I think it comes up red when you mute that. At that point, you can set it down. And if you pick it back up and hit the button again, it'll unmute. You don't have to wait 5 seconds after that or whatever it is for it to come connected. It'll be connected already to the system. But in this event, if you put it back into the base at any time, just recall that when you take it out, it's going to take another 5 seconds for it to connect. So just be aware of that. The podium mic, you can see, is more of a omnidirectional type mic. It's not like the mics you have up there or even what we have up here. It's actually controlled here at the chairs table. There's a little button that Pettis can hit that'll activate it or not. When it's green, it's live. When it's red, it's not. From what they've told us, basically from the sides back this way, it'll catch sound. If it's in the front, not so much. So if you see that and that's green, if you're talking, it's probably, and you're not in front of it, you're behind it or beside it, it's picking you up. So just be aware of that. So if I've missed anything, I'm sure the IT folks will come running down screaming, saying I messed up something. But if there's any other questions, if they have any issues, we'll get them down here.
Okay, we're sort of the guinea pigs, I think, tonight. What we've got here, I have hearing aids. Right now, I feel like I'm talking to y'all in a cave. Got to get all of that figured out up here. But they told me that that's a bubble right here. And I thought, oh, I've got a green button here, and if somebody's talking too long, I can push that and they go up in the bubble. I didn't know what we had here. But it is quite, it's going to be a lot different than what we've had before. At least you're at least when you're talking, all of a sudden you don't disappear all of a sudden. I think that's good, great. I want to commend our IT department for the work that they've done over the past few weeks getting this in here this fast.
And if I could add one more thing, you probably already realized this, but there's speakers in front of every one of you. So regardless of who's talking, you should be able to hear that pretty clearly. So I echo what Pettis was saying, really appreciate the time and effort that went into this with our IT folks. They've done a great job putting this together.
All right, we begin with a new business, and it's item A, rezoning zoning ordinance amendment request. All rezoning regulation amendments request will be considered at the August 14, 2025 Board of Commissioners meeting unless deferred or withdrawn by the Planning Commission or the applicant. We begin with item 1, Cole Wilson for SL7 Space Park LP, REZ 25016, location is Sulphur Springs Road. The commission district is 3. Michael Rather is the commissioner. Size of the site is approximately 157 acres. Tax map 48, parcel 80.05 and 81. Maps 57, parcel 6 and 6.01. Existing zoning is planned unit development. Proposed zoning is PUD amended number of buildings. Mr. DeMasi.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and good evening, everyone, again. Just as a way of a little bit of background on this, these properties were originally rezoned Plan Unit Development, PUD, by the Board of Commissioners back in August of 2022. The approved building configuration, which you can see the original plan as well as the proposed plan in your pattern books, which is on your iPads tonight, was for 2 buildings. One was about 1.1 million square feet. The other one was up to 373,000 and change. The total square footage was not to exceed 1.5 million square feet for both buildings, as was originally approved. Following the zoning approval, the Planning Commission did approve site plans for both buildings at their November 14th, 2022 meetings. However, construction has never started on either building. Since the time of those approvals, staff has had several conversations with the owner of the property, really, who's present tonight, regarding the proposed building layout. They did ask if they could have more than 2 buildings while staying within the 1.5 million square foot limit. After reviewing the pattern book, we did explain that the pattern book was very specific about being 2 buildings and only 2 buildings, and any amendment allowing more than that would have to be approved as a major deviation to the pattern book, which is what brings this here to you tonight. So the amendment process is identical to the original PUD process. In other words, a neighborhood meeting, public hearings before the Planning Commission, Board of Commissioners, etc. They did have a neighborhood meeting on May 27th of this year. Most of the concerns were like those expressed during the rezoning process back in 2022. The applicant explained that their request was just changing what had already been approved. The pattern book for this application, and like I stated, it is on your iPads, shows a total of 4 buildings on the site ranging anywhere from a little over 276,000 square feet to about 550,000 and so. Building sizes and footprints may vary, but the maximum area of all the buildings will not be greater than 1.5 million square feet, same as the originally approved application. I will point out, Mike, if you could back that up to page, I think it's 3. There's a chart in your pattern book that they include, yeah, right there, in your pattern book that they included that shows the bulk regulations, what was approved back in 2022, and then what they're proposing tonight. So what you can see, and this is a pretty good overall synopsis of what they're asking for as far as the setbacks, as far as accessory structure setbacks, lot width, coverage, the height, things like that. Really nothing is changing here with the exception of the building count. You can see it's going from 2 to 4. Even the maximum square footage has not changed any. It's really just the building count. So this project is still going to access Sulphur Springs Road. The concept plan does show a 60-foot wide, at least as shown in the pattern book, a right-of-way. We've had some conversations with the applicant. We've had some conversations with our highway superintendent regarding that road, about it possibly being a private drive as opposed to a public road. Staff is not opposed to that. The applicant seems to be amenable to that as well. It would still be built to county road specifications. It would just be privately owned as opposed to a public road. So although it's shown right now as a public right-of-way, again, I don't think staff really has any particular issue about making that a private road. The applicant staff have had many conversations with TDOT regarding the access to Sulphur Springs Road, clarifying what's TDOT right-of-way, what is not. As part of their application, the applicant did update their traffic study and resubmitted the traffic study for our approval. It was reviewed by our third-party traffic consultant, Neil Schaefer. All the improvements that were identified in the original study have been committed to. There's also 3 additional improvements that have also been recommended, namely, and Mike, you might want to speak a little bit more to exactly those, but the 3 different, additional, improvements that were recommended had to do with a turn lane coming off of 840 eastbound going toward, to the east, going toward the 3-way stop there at Leanna Road. A new improvement that you can see, constructing an eastbound right turn lane through I-840 southbound on-ramp with 200 feet of storage length, and also a new improvement coming off the off-ramp, off of 840 southbound right turn lane with, I think it says 300 feet of storage on there. So along with the original improvements that were identified with the original traffic study, the applicant has committed to those, but he's also committed to these 3 improvements as well. So I wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of that. Regarding the landscape and amenities and everything else, again, this is a commercial PUD. There's not any amenities per se. Industrial properties are required to install a Type 3 buffer. You can see that the buffers and everything have not changed on this. They are still showing a 150-foot buffer to the, I guess that'd be the southern end of the property. I will say that it looks like the alignment of the buildings the way they are now, one of the buildings is closer to the properties to the west under this plan than they were under the previous plan. However, they are still maintaining at least 150-foot separation with that buffer that they're going. So with all that, again, the primary change here is to allow 4 building layout as opposed to only the 2. Everything else about this really is unchanged with the exception of the additional traffic improvements that have been committed to by the applicant. With that, I will be happy to answer any questions. Mike, I didn't know if you had anything further to add on that. Thank you.
Commissioners, questions for staff?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Doug, we talked about,
Wait till you get a green light there.
You got to make sure that you actually talk into it. If you hold it down where you were, it's not going to pick you up very well. I could hear you when you first started talking, but then as you kept talking, the speaker cut off. No, I think you turned it off. Is it a red light or is it a green light on it? Give it a second.
better?
I can hear you now. Just make sure you're talking into the mic.
Very good, thank you. One time we talked about a traffic
Yes.
that 3-way stops. My memory is probably not what it should be, but I thought conversation led to that would be traffic light there.
Yes, that is still the case. Yes, sir. That has not changed.
Very good. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Mike,
Mr. Shirley?
Mike, the new improvement that's suggested, the northbound right turn lane, is that to help because 18-wheelers will be turning left? This is going to not clog up that intersection while one truck turns left. It's going to allow people that are going to the right to get on and get out of the way?
Yes, that
Okay.
is the reason.
Thank you.
Others? Questions or comments? Not, we'll ask that the applicant or the applicant's representative come forward. Answer any questions that the commissioners may have. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Rob Mulchin. I'm here on behalf of Stone Lake Partners. They're actually in the attendance in the night. I'd go through this if you really want me to. Doug did a really good explanation of pretty much what the changes are to the plan. You can see on pages 8 and 9 of this comparative look between the plan that was approved 3 years ago and the plan that you guys are looking at today is on page 9. So you can see the differentiation between the original plan that had 2 buildings and the 1.1, which is pretty large. What Stone Lake is wanting to do is kind of change the complexure of this site in regards to building massings, because it's easier for them from a standpoint to lease these buildings out than it is to a 1.1. If you remember, for those that were here, either on planning commission or county commission, that the 1.1 million square foot building was for a specific local business. Since that deal has fallen to the wayside, Stone Lake has come in as the new developer, and they have a different outlook in regards to property on that side, so they want to make smaller buildings. So that's the request, is to take 2 buildings down, 2 to 4 buildings, so they can have more manageable type of layout, and also seeing standpoint for their potential buyers on that side. As Doug did talk about the configuration of this, as we did talk today in regards to the public road versus private road, my applicant is definitely in tune with making this a private roadway. So that would take the responsibility of the maintenance of this roadway off the county and put it back to the developer, manage the property itself on that side. So we are definitely on board with that option to change that out. So, regards to the overall plan itself, as you can see that, we pretty much have the same stormwater management program. We are obtaining double the standard quantities, just like we were in the original plan. So we are, the impervious surface of this has increased a little bit, but also our ponds have increased, as you can see between the 2 plans, to adequately take care of that water. Plans implemented on that side. Talking about in regards to the improvements from the traffic study, as Doug talked about, we did our updated traffic study because the other traffic study was outdated. The background traffic that was counted at interchange had gone up significantly enough to warrant the 3 new improvements that Doug outlined, which is the 2, both the off-ramps, north and southbound. We'll be installing a new second lane, which will be 300 feet of storage. That's there, one, to take care of the current traffic today, but also with the increase, as Mr. Shirley pointed out, in regards to truck traffic getting off those interchanges on that side, will alleviate that. It's also here to also help, especially on the northbound ramp that backs up continually onto 840 at heavy volume times. This will help alleviate that. And then part of this discussion was also the traffic light that we will be installing as well. Those 2 things will help the situation, but it's not take care of the situation altogether, but the extra improvement is definitely going to help with traffic flow in this area on that side. And of course, we've got the extra dedicated right-hand turn lane as you're heading eastbound on Sulphur Springs away from the development, to have traffic have your means to get on the on-ramp that's southbound on 40 on that side. So those are the improvements besides the ones that we already committed to 3 years ago on that side. You can go through the book, you can see all the design standards and stuff in regards to the roadways, the intersections and such. And then again, Doug did talk about our buffering system. We are still staying with the same bufferings as that were approved before on that side. As Doug did point out, the reconfiguration, because of the 4 building configuration, we did move some of the infrastructure and or buildings a little bit closer to the property lines, but that's still staying with inside the means of our increased 150-foot buffers around the property on that side. So we're still maintaining that to our neighbors, certain they'll keep that separation in there. And that's a buffer, that's a preservation buffer. It's also a buffer that we will, in places where it may be thin, to go back and plant in more plants to that buffering system inside. So that's pretty much kind of what the request is mainly just to, take that big building, chop it up into 3, kind of get moving down the roads. Here for any questions you may have.
Commissioner Shirley?
Rob, was there a difference in the traffic count for the traffic study with the changes from the development, not the community traffic, but as a result of the changes, was there any change in traffic count that the development is going to generate?
They looked at it, as the previous one, we had a dedicated user for the big building on that side, so they went back and had to go back and reevaluate it based on this being generic footprints. So using the standard engineering models, those numbers were computed into those calculations. So yes, the background traffic and the increase in the truck traffic and the employee traffic all compounded into factors that require us to have those additional changes to the
Discounting the background traffic of the community, what about the development itself? Like, it is anticipated that it will be more traffic for this change
Yes,
than
so they
a single use for 1 million square foot? Okay,
Yes,
thank
sir.
you.
Commissioner?
We did receive. What are the working hours? What type of, we had some people in the neighborhood concerned about the noise.
In regards to noise, we did have a sound testing study done on the property on that side. So in regards to that, we've included at the entrance, we've included a 12-foot tall sound wall because that's the closest point we have to existing property next door. So we have a 12-foot sound wall. I can't remember the length of it, but it does span that entrance element there. So that's where our closest location is, adjacent house on that side. So we felt that since we're such a narrow space with that, with between T-Dot's right away and that property, that's a very narrow throat. So we're sticking with the commitment we made years ago to include that 12-foot sound wall so that we are taking care of that neighbor who's most immediately impacted inside. So that's kind of where we're at. In regards to the number of hours, there could be different shifts, be a 24-hour shift and maybe a 4-hour shift. So there will be opportunities. So that was the same commitment we.
Anyone else? If not, thank you, Ron.
Thank you all.
We will now open it up for public hearing time. And there is a process that we will be following. We will open the session up for the public hearing. You will have 3 minutes to come and make your comments, either for or against. There will be no questions and answers. You will come up here to the podium. You'll see there is a timer there. It will tell you how much time you have left, a green light and a yellow light, and then a red light. Red light means you're out of time. And just stand there and speak within this area, and we'll open it up at this time. Who would like? Here, give us your name and address. Stand right there and look towards the commission.
My name is Thomas Clark. I live at 3300 Shacklet Road. It's the property on the west side of this proposal HUD. My only concern is we were promised, and we really was fighting when all this was going on about the preservation of Shacklet Road on our side, that we weren't going to be impacted by this. If you can go between the two slides, you can see that they're talking about the building might be smaller square footage, but look how much more closer it comes onto our property. And this was a concern that they came to our house before we had the public meeting, and we talked with the developers about sound barriers, some kind of wall or something. My understanding, if it don't exist on this PUD, then we don't have any leg as citizens to stand on. It seems like to me that they're encroaching more and more on my wife and I's privacy. And at this time, my wife and I, we actually approved the first one, not the second, because it's really going to impact Shacklet Road in the way that they are getting up on our property. I mean, 150 feet of trees is not going to stop a 24-hour-a-day business. Us impacting us. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next.
My name's Elizabeth Clark. That was my husband. We're at 3300 Shacklet Road. You saw where our home is. This is very difficult for me. the first thing I would like to know is we have been informed there's going to be multiple blasting events going on this site. What I would like to know, because I don't know, maybe you know, but I do not know, once the blasting starts, if there are cracks caused to the foundation in my home, who am I to contact? Before I leave here tonight, I would like the name and the phone number of who I am to contact when those cracks in my foundation start, when the blasting begins. We are members of this county. We pay taxes in this county. Our rights and our lives should matter at least that much that we can protect our home. My other question is, when the construction begins, what are going to be the hours of the construction? Is it going to be 7 days a week? Or is it going to be a 5-day, 8 to 5 workday? Because that is going to impact our lives phenomenally if we are dealing with construction 24 hours a day, 150 feet away from my bedroom window. That is what we are dealing with. That is. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Anyone else?
My name's Andrew White, address is 3013 Shacklet. I actually live across the street from the Clarks and directly across from where the same corner that she was referring to. The one thing that I just want to repeat that's been questioned even from initial time that this was approved was the environmental impact. When I mean environmental impact, I'm talking about the flooding. Now, I understand in the last meeting we had, the public meeting, I asked the question, how many sinkholes are going to be capped? And the reason why I asked that, because I understand that there is a responsibility for them to contain the water runoff, but what about the water underneath? Because we all know that those sinkholes actually serve as like a vent release. So if that's going to be capped, what happens to that water? Has that been covered in the environmental impact? Because I'm concerned about that as well as a lot of people in that area. I'll also echo the same concerns that the Clarks have. I'm concerned about the not only the noise pollution, but light pollution. I just like for y'all to consider all.
Thank you, sir. Next. Anyone else? If not, I'm closing the public hearing. Commissioners? It's open to you now. Commissioner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mike and Doug, what is going to be happening on Jacklet Road? I see the red band of color where it looks like a right-of-way location, but are there improvements going to be happening on Shacklet?
Not as far as any traffic improvements or anything, because there's no access to it. You'll see on the, kind of, I guess it's the lower end of the property, I guess that'd be kind of yeah, right around there. There's road frontage, I think it says F, to right-of-way to be abandoned, about 0.27 acres. So that's an area that is technically right-of-way that would be abandoned for them. So there isn't any access onto Shacklet Road, so no improvements were identified to Shacklet Road.
Okay. I kind of like Jeff, I was sort of thinking that at one time there was going to be an emergency, part of Shacklet, maybe it was going to be an emergency outlet, fire and rescue.
There was some discussion about that. I think ultimately, after the public hearing, and of course, I mean, we have our fire marshal here, he can certainly speak to any concerns he has, but regarding the access in and of itself, I know that Commissioner Rather, at the time when this came through, was very adamant, and most of the people out there were very adamant about no access onto
Okay.
Shacklet Road, which this ended up being approved even without any kind of a secondary access.
Okay. The, in the big building 4, which is the larger building, south side, I guess it is. It, it, it has been moved closer west or further west, but it's still within like 150-foot buffer.
Yeah, the 150-foot buffer has been maintained. Something else, I know that when I was discussing it with the applicant, they did say that they, Mike, can you go back to the old plan real quick? Yeah, the old plan kind of showed some of the truck docks over on, well, you can see they were both on, I guess that'd be the west and the east side of the building. And then the employee and whatever parking were on the north and south sides. Under the new plan, they kind of flip-flopped that a little bit. You know, the truck parking and the docking areas are on the north and south, and then the employee parking would be on the north or the
Okay,
east. And west.
so there will be no doors on the east and west side.
For truck docks, correct.
For truck docks. Right. But that does open up for the truck on either side, particularly at night. They've got a long run heading west or east. But if they were heading west, they're shooting their truck light directly at that property of the Clark and other neighbors through that tree line. So by flipping that building, that actually causes more light to me to be placed through those trees at the property. So I'm not so sure that I wouldn't want a little more of some type of buffering on the west side of that building to prevent that. See what I mean?
Yes, sir. No, I see exactly what you're saying.
I don't know what the length of that building is. I can tell on this drawing. But you've got a long stretch of 2 driveways heading west. Say the trucks were at the easternmost door and we're heading west to get out, which seemed like the logical route. They've got 2 long straightaways of headlights beaming into our property, or at least through the trees, of course. I don't think that's a smart thing. So maybe we can chat about that more.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman. Mike, can you use your measuring tool to see the Clarks were concerned that they were losing some of the green space or the buffer? As I flip,
Don't believe this book is scale, if that's what you're asking.
yeah, as I flip back and forth between the two, it's hard for me to really tell. I see Commissioner Cush's point about the straightaways, but in the original, all of those trucks backing up to those docks would be beaming their lights through the trees and trailers. So I think it's, when I look at those two considerations, it's kind of 6 one, half dozen the other, but you could put some backstops at the end of those 2 straightaways on that side of the building. That would help. Maybe the developer would be willing to do that. Or a berm with some trees on it or something to help mitigate the lights going straight through. But since this isn't to scale, it's hard to tell if they're getting closer to the Clark's house.
They do have a profile. Let me get back to it. Everything's kind of spread out in the book. So this is Building 4, the big building at the end. This blue cross-section here matches this cross-section up here. So this, I believe, is the new warehouse. This is the Clark's house. I think that's what they're trying to show. It's about 467 feet. So they've got the car park up at the edge of the building, 150-foot landscape buffer, and then there's some distance from the property line to their house. That's what they're trying to show here. This fuchsia-looking one is a bit farther south here. Bottom shows to be 590 feet. The new warehouse truck parking area here, and there's showed 245 feet from the edge of the truck parking and maneuvering area. And then likewise, here's one, the yellow one, bottom of it.
Mr. Shirley?
Mr. Sanders, can you, I think you were the one, when I had a similar question about blasting, can you answer the question that she had about who's responsible for construction, like blasting and construction damage and things like that?
Sure, yeah. The state of Tennessee Fire Marshal regulates blasting. North County Fire Marshal's Office will handle like ultimately that all goes to if there are any blasting. Speaking distances, residences. Complaints associated with blasting will go to state fire website. One that can be filled out by.
Thank you. Ms. Belt, is construction hours of operation, is that through your office?
There's currently no regulation in Rutherford County for beginning and end times.
Likewise for the site work. So we do, at the pre-construction meeting, we do ask, be aware of, the surrounding neighbors and be reasonable with your time. But like Tanya said, we don't have any rules against the hours of operation.
Do they ever agree to hours of operation as a part of their construction pre-plan in your meetings? Or I know you ask them to, but there's
no stick or carrot to offer.
Good to know. And my last question, I think, for now, is some concerns about what I'll speak to. Maybe I have two questions actually. One for Fire Marshal. At the advice of some people that were on the commission at the time that this was first approved, I had raised questions about the egress, an emergency access only onto Shacklet. And what I saw when you all saw this the first time was that the neighborhood said they didn't want that. The people in the area said that they did not even want that. Do you still do not have any concerns that one entrance is enough?
Just looking at it looks like we have, obviously you have the main drag. Yes, different access.
No, we do ask them to present a geotechnical report. They have done some preliminary borings and testing that they've done, and we ask that any sinkhole closure be in the presence of a licensed geotechnical engineer.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner.
a couple comments. So Josh, in regards to the pre-blast permit, you're saying typically if a resident is within a certain amount of whatever that footage is, there will be a pre-blast report done. But if you're outside of that distance, the clerk could pay for a pre-blast review done, right? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. Okay. But I guess my real question is, even if they might be outside if they have a pre-blast survey done and there was damage, because we all know in limestone that shock can carry for a great distance. If they were to have damage and had a pre-blast survey done, the developer or the site utility contractor are still on the hook. Okay. Okay. And Mike and Doug, question in regards to traffic. So we've determined that the prior proposal was for a single proprietor. And now we've got opportunity here with multiple buildings and multiple different occupants. So the traffic count is going to be higher. Rob couldn't, and rightly so, couldn't really put a number on it, but the traffic is going to be increased, not a single proprietorship. So the traffic study that was done reflects that.
Yes.
Right?
That's correct.
And you two are still happy with the traffic count and the measures that they've proposed to handle that?
Yes, sir, and just to keep in mind, the bigger building, remember in the original plan, there was going to be two buildings. The
Right.
single proprietor was in the bigger building. There was going to be a second proprietor. It wasn't just going to be them, I don't think, in both buildings.
Okay.
So now, based on what Mr. Mulchin was saying when he was up here a little earlier, they did have to kind of change the methodology that they used in order to complete the update to the traffic study. They had to use some slightly different numbers, which did increase the counts, but it also resulted in additional improvements. So the original improvements that were identified are still part of this application, along with the 3 additional improvements that were identified as the result of the updated study. So to answer your question, yes, we are still comfortable with the results of that.
Okay. And so explain to me and the committee, by putting the entry road into a private holding, how does that affect traffic one way or the other?
I don't think it necessarily affects the amount of traffic, no.
It's just a maintenance issue.
Correct.
Okay.
It's a maintenance issue, plus there were some concerns regarding the bollards that Mike's kind of got up there on the screen. You can kind of see those being in the public right-of-way, which could cause some liability issues. So for the county, if it be a public road. Now, of course, we understand that the reason why they put that in there as part of their design, again, trying to discourage any kind of tractor-trailer traffic going left or to the west on the Sulphur Springs Road. But, I mean, from our standpoint, I don't think private versus public road really affects the traffic volumes any. It's, like you said, it's more of a maintenance issue.
All right. Have you seen any or heard talk of any development upcoming down Sulphur Springs to the west?
To the west, no. Now, directly across the street, you'll recall, we just recently approved, yeah, Mike's highlighting it right there, a potential mini warehouse type facility.
Right.
Now, they've received their zoning approval. I believe they went to the Board of Zoning Appeal. Amber, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that did go to the Board of Zoning Appeals as well. Now, we have not seen site plans yet for that or had a pre-application meeting. Now, we've already let them know that we would expect a traffic study on their end too, to find out what kind of improvements they may need to contribute to as far as access to their site and any possible improvements Sulphur Springs Road in that area. So we haven't had that scoping meeting or anything yet. We're just kind of waiting on what their timeline is.
Okay, all right. And I guess going back to my original concern about the long stretch of potential lighting issues on Building 4, I would like to ask the applicant or Mr. Molson if they would consider some kind of an end cap or berm type of situation where they could at least get some height on some earth above the tractor trailer lights. Particularly, this is going to be a problem in the fall when the leaves drop or at night. To me, it could be a real issue. So I'd like to see if Rob would see if his client would commit some kind of a lighting protection on the ends of those Building Run and maybe even the one corner of Building 3 there.
We'll ask that he'll come forward this time and answer that.
Mr. Push, you do have a valid point. The applicant and myself have been discussing it while you brought it up. We're going to include into this package as part of this is a berm and landscape buffer at the end of those runs, in regards to that property next door. So as part of the 150-foot cross section at the edge of that where the project will stop, we will include a berm with a landscape buffer of evergreen trees to shield those headlights coming towards their property, especially in the, like you said, time when those trees defoliate. That way we've got something that is there in an evergreen capacity that will help mitigate headlights coming.
Okay, Rob, thank you, and thank the developer. Would that be in addition to what is already required in terms of the buffer that you've got planned?
Yeah, so the 150-foot buffer, when we got approved 3 years ago, and then subsequently with the site plans that had the landscape plans in there, in that 150-foot buffer, we've reserved all the trees that are in there today. There's some scrub brush, other scrub evergreen trees that are interlaced in those canopy trees. But there was also an area that was where was an old trailer that sat in the corner of that property. We went back and added a whole bunch of evergreens and other tree types into that empty space. So we'll be doing the same thing more or less in that 150-foot buffer, but right at the edge where the pavement or whatever grading that we have that runs up to that preservation area, we'll be installing a berm with evergreen trees to help block headlights going through that buffer area.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners, anything else? Still open for a motion or further discussion? Commissioner?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. It says here that the on-site lighting will comply with Rutherford County performance standards to reduce light pollution. Mr. DeMasi, could you just briefly discuss what our standards are for outside lighting?
Yes, sir. We do have, as you stated, performance standards in our zoning ordinance regarding lighting at the properties. There's a certain threshold. They'll be required to submit photometric plan with any site plan submittal, like they did with their original site plan submittal, demonstrating compliance at the property line between the existing facility or the proposed facility that they're building and any existing residential areas adjacent to that. So we'll review that photometric plan as it's presented to us.
So is that, understand better, is that with the lighting more facing down?
Yeah, the fixtures and we'll, yeah, we'll look for that too. I mean, we usually encourage them to use fixtures that are pointing the light downward as opposed to like floodlights where the light goes everywhere. So, I mean, that's typically what we see.
Okay.
That's almost, I won't say it's industry standard, but we see that predominantly in a lot of the sites that we look at, box-type fixtures that point the light downward.
Right. Right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
That answers my.
I've got one last question. Mike, in regards to the detention pond, I think it was mentioned that the impervious area has decreased a little bit, but the ponds have increased slightly as well, right? I know they're still double, from a safety factor standpoint, they're double what they need, but they have enlarged a little bit because of the impervious areas also from the original phase.
That's what I asked the development team a little bit earlier today. I haven't got an answer back about the increase or decrease in impervious area. The footprint's staying the same, but you can see that there are more trailer parking adjacent to some buildings. So I haven't got a final number yet.
Well, have the ponds gotten a little bigger than the?
Yes, sir. Just on this rezoning booklet they have, but I haven't seen the construction plans to prove that.
Okay, all right.
Commissioner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe that this plan change is very close to the original that was approved several years ago. I think that the changes that we've asked for and have been agreed to by the developers make it better than when they started today. And I think that we've addressed most of the concerns that were brought up today, except for hours of construction, and maybe that's a talk for another day for our whole county. But with that, I will make the motion. I move to approve with staff comments and the changes that we've requested to today.
Motion has been made. We have a second. Is there further discussion? Not, Madam Secretary, please call the roll for a vote.
Jeff Phillips. Mike Cush.
Yes.
Lee Bogle. Charlotte P. Trey Gooch.
Yes.
Jim Thompson. Michael Shirley.
Yes.
Jason Beavers. Amber Brown. Pettis Reed.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion does carry. Remember that all rezoning regulation amendment requests will be considered at the August 14th, 2025 Board of Commissioners meeting unless deferred or withdrawn by the Planning Commission or applicant. Staff reports and other business. Mr. Demasi.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to kind of talk just a little bit about the direction you all are wanting to go regarding Plan Rutherford. You know, we had our public hearing on the 23rd of June, just a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3, I guess, and had a brief discussion regarding it the day after. Since that time, I know I've had some discussions with our county attorney about the direction as far as what process might need to be followed depending on what direction we go. And Nick's here, so he can correct me if I'm wrong. Based on the conversation that we had, we do feel that if no changes have been made to the document, to the maps, or anything like that, we don't have to have another public hearing. If we do make some minor changes, tweaks, things like that, we could probably still get by without doing another public hearing on it. However, if we start making more substantial changes, then obviously we are going to have to open it up for a public hearing. Some of the discussions that I've had, namely with some of the folks in the building community and things like that, haven't so much as early as earlier today, late as earlier today, as a matter of fact. There has been some discussion. We talked about possible changes to the overall map. However, we have had some conversations today regarding maybe not map changes, but maybe just some changes to some of the density allowances in the various character areas. For instance, the rural living being one example. I'll just use that as an example. Rather than having a range between 1 acre and 5 acres, maybe having a range between 2 units per acre and 5 acres, something like that. I talked with our consultant team, Michael Skipper, a little earlier today There's also some concern from at least those that I talked to regarding the possibility of some zoning changes in that it's really not, it's really the darker green area. I guess I will bring up a map here on the, so bear with me just a second. I'm just going to bring up the actual map itself, just to, and forgive me, I didn't have the page number memorized, but we can at least get that here and kind of run through it. Hope you guys are reading this over real fast here, so almost there. There we go. Like I said, most of the discussion on this map really isn't so much what's in the urban growth boundaries, not so much what's out the outer edges here in this dark brown. It's really more this darker green area is really the area that's been causing the most concern. And I will say, I think part of it's because folks are looking at the map as the entire plan, where there's a lot more to the plan than just the map and then the character area descriptions that follow the map. So there was some discussion regarding, well, what happens if, let's say, something out in this area gets, it's got good roads, well, I'm just, using an example, it's got good roads, it's got good soil, but it's identified in this area. Well, there's language in the plan that speaks to those kind of things. So when I talked to Michael Skipper a little earlier today, he said he was going to kind of pull some of that out, make it a little more easily to be seen versus the way that it is right now, kind of give it its own heading, but the language is there. So we're thinking it may be a combination of just some of those changes we talked about and maybe some of the text amendments that we just discussed regarding just highlighting a few things might be enough. Again, this is not going to be a situation where everybody's going to be completely happy with it, but maybe everybody can live with it at that point. So I guess, not expecting a vote tonight, obviously, just kind of wanting to get a little bit of direction from you all as to how you'd like to move forward. I can put out there that we could do another work session after our next day meeting that we have. We do have several plats and plans on it, but I don't think it'd be something that would take all morning. Of course, now that I say that, we'll be here till 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But I do think that if we did have another work session, I don't have to advertise a work session like I have to advertise a public hearing. So I would have time to get something out there to say, hey, yes, we're going to have a work session following the next planning commission meeting, and then maybe talk through some of those changes. I really believe we're close as far as where we are with making a recommendation on this, but I just need some input from you all before we go anywhere else with it.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Doug, I'm processing what you just said, so forgive me if my thoughts are a little incoherent or meandering a little bit.
Well, that's usually how I speak, so
Yes.
that's my own fault, I guess.
Did I understand you correctly in that, let's use the green, for example, in the rural living section? I agree that with the developers' concerns that what if we have a piece of property in the rural living section that does lend itself to higher density because all the check boxes are there. We have roads, we have soils, we have infrastructure in place, all the things. The schools are great. We just built a new school. There we go. Okay, we've got the capacity to have a higher density neighborhood there. Are you saying that that you're looking to tweak what we already have in the plan, or that you're just drawing out that is allowed on a case-by-case basis?
Well, and I think it's a little of both. I think we can tweak the existing language in the plan and maybe make some small modifications to allow for that kind of thing. But at the same time, it is a case-by-case basis.
Correct.
That still gives them the opportunity. That doesn't change regardless of what we adopt. Somebody can come in and say, hey, I want to do something in this area. We may look at it. They may say, well, we think it's got adequate infrastructure and all these boxes are checked. We may look at it and say, no, we don't really think they are. And we still have the ability to recommend denial based on the recommendations of the plan. However, if we do feel that in these areas that several of these boxes are checked and we think that it's appropriate, then we have the ability and still be consistent with the plan to make a recommendation to approve a rezoning like that. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm trying to right now, we have people that are bringing applications to the board, and they use something that I don't like to hear, which is by right. I can do this. By right, my property can have this. And I said, no, it's by appropriate zoning, right? So I don't want to mislead anyone to make them think that they can put higher density. I guess I want to spell out what is adequate infrastructure in place to support. Like,
Right.
if it's not spelled out, I don't want to give people the impression that they have by right the
Yes.
right zoning necessarily.
Right, and
and
yes.
everything. That's what I tell people. It's like it could be in the rural preserve that they can bring a PUD and ask for an apartment complex, right? I mean,
Yes, I mean, they could do that today.
correct.
Yeah, right,
right.
absolutely.
So I don't want to get too far away from making big changes in our rural preserve and rural living area. This is me personally. Uh, If if we have a piece of property that does lend itself to higher density, we just need to really I just would like to see it spelled out. What does that mean?
Yes.
Uh,
And I think, I agree with what you're saying, and I think what happens regardless of what is adopted here, once the plan is adopted, that's kind of the foundation. After that, that's when you start looking at the changes to the development regulations
Right,
themselves, your zoning plan, your zoning map. That's going to be a huge project in and of itself right there. And I think the folks, at least some of the folks I've spoken with about this, I think have the impression that if this is adopted, then the next day everything changes as far as the
Right.
zoning, which it does not, because
Right.
this does not change zoning of property. But to
they
your
are
point,
right. They are correct in that we are going to use this to make changes.
that is,
to the things
you are
that-
absolutely
yeah,
correct.
absolutely.
That is the foundation, and then the regulations build off of that foundation.
For me personally, it sounds like we need one more work session. And for me, this is me speaking. I don't know, see what y'all think, but I think maybe one more work session and then another public hearing where I'm going to be probably ready to move this on, like to take a vote. Like,
Well, and I'll just say this, and I'm fine with the work session, because that's, like I said, it's in 2 weeks from today.
Sure.
And we can get ready for that pretty quick. At that point, what I would recommend at least is, let's see where the discussion goes, what changes may be made, if any. If there's no changes made, then at that point, there's no reason to have another public hearing unless you just feel that one is necessary. There's no legal reason to do it, I should say.
our work session will be recorded
Yes, sir.
and
We
put
can,
on the county YouTube channel.
yes.
And people can still, regardless of the, if our council says we haven't made changes enough to warrant a public hearing, everyone can still come for public comment.
That's
and Sign up
correct.
for public comment period.
That's correct.
Which is
Nothing-
basically the same as public hearing.
Nothing like that. Nothing changes regarding the process.
Correct.
That's
So
correct.
I withdraw that comment about maybe another public hearing. I think that a work session, legal's advice as to whether we need one. If we don't, encourage people, if they have something to say, to sign up for public comment. But I've only been on this committee since October, and I'm ready to, like, let's move this on.
Yes, sir.
So you're basically saying at the next,
Our next planning commission meeting on I guess that's the
We have a work
28th,
session.
we can just do a work session, and I can run a quick advertisement in the Murfreesboro Post stating that that's exactly what we're doing. And like I said, there's no legal requirement as far as the number of days like there is for a public hearing. There's no 30-day notice.
that under general agreement, commissioners, you're sitting here. That's under general agreement, we will move for next commission meeting.
That's what we'll do.
We will have a work session following our general business.
That's all I had. Mike, did you have any?
All right, if there's no other business, I move we adjourn.